Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seed Stage. My name's Christopher Goodfellow, and I'm the program manager of The Pitch. For those of you that haven't come across The Pitch before, if you're new to the podcast, we run a nationwide program of support for startup founders. That means we go all across the country running demo days, helping people meet investors and improve the way they pitch. Today, we're going to be talking about how you reach out to investors, how you get those all important meetings to close your funding round. And we'll share some really practical tips on finding investors, first of all, working out who to approach, how to make those approaches, whether they're cold or through a warm introduction, and also how to organize all of that activity. So hopefully you can make your life a little bit easier and your odds of succeeding in your fundraising round a little bit higher. Today's episode is sponsored by Notion. They are a all-in-one app that blends together everything you need to run your startup. So there's lots of really cool templates that are easy to use, and they will help you with processes like hiring and onboarding team members, dealing with customer requests or orders, and indeed getting your funding round together. So really fun, easy to use software, and we've included some links below to a free trial and also to some of the templates that are relevant to investment rounds as well. So I'll be joined in a second by two founders that are at different stages in their investment journey, and they're going to share lots of practical tips on what succeeded and what's worked for them. I'd like to get our guests to introduce themselves now. So Vinay, if you could start and just tell us a little bit about yourself and your startup.
Yep, thanks, Chris. Hey, everyone. I'm one of the co-founders here at CreatorStock. We're a content marketplace where we allow digital creators to monetize their content, both publicly using a marketplace and privately using cloud SaaS tooling.
Lovely, thanks for joining us. And Lauren, tell us about Oatsu.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm the founder of Oatsu, and we make it easy to enjoy a healthy breakfast on the go with our freshly prepared overnight oats. We've got a pot here, and we also are launching a range of just add milk overnight oat mixes that you can just add milk to and then prep perfect overnight oat breakfast anytime and anywhere. We started as a direct-to-consumer business, launched with rapid grocer Jiffy, became their best-selling breakfast, and then our first nationwide listing was with Holland & Barrett last year, and we're in discussions with lots of other supermarket retailers at the moment.
Great. And I always love it when someone's got a product that they can sort of show and tell on the podcast as well. So it'd be good to, obviously we're here to talk about sort of outreach to investors and how you go through a round. So it'd be good to kind of understand where you are at in that process and kind of what funding rounds you've been through and what you're working on at the moment. So Lauren, if we start with you and you could just give us a bit of info on that.
Yeah, so we raised our first round of investment at the end of last year. We raised 250,000 from 279 investors, both from angel investors, but also through a Seeders crowd fund. And I think the crowd fund for us was a fantastic way to spread the word and took our initial investment well beyond our initial fundraising target. And yeah, I'm more than happy to go into like how we achieved it and the different tools that we used.
Excellent. And what was the balance of kind of number of people from the crowd? So kind of retail investors versus angels?
Yeah, so we raised the initial chunk of investment that you need to bring to the platform from around 10 angels. And that took about 6 months to raise and was reaching out one-to-one to angel investors that I connected with through LinkedIn, a lot through introductions. And I then decided that crowdfunding would be a good way to put kind of a time-bound campaign out there and quite quickly raise the rest of the investment that we needed. So, and yeah, was able to raise a really large amount compared with our initial fundraising target in about 6 weeks, and around the vast majority of them came from either the crowd or they were connections through LinkedIn. I think I knew about 20% of the investors in the end, and then around 80% I didn't know, or they were connections.
Yeah, and I guess it's a great way to involve people that like know your product, know you as a founder and your personal brand. Out of interest, to get to that 10 angels at the start in the first 6 months, like, do you know how many people you reached out to in total?
Yeah, I reached out to probably between 50 and 100. I tried wherever possible to get warm introductions, though. I think that's a great help if you can get that. I spoke with founders in food and beverage and even other industries that had raised recently and asked if there were any investors that may be interested in what we were doing. And I also took part in a couple of accelerators with Unrest, NatWest, and LSE. And through accelerators, you're able to meet a lot of investors in their own networks, which is great. I attended lots of events. So the people that I reached out to, usually they had some sort of connection, or I'd met them and had a brief conversation with them. And I only did a little bit of more cold outreach, and I found that less effective.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, we'll go into a little bit more detail on some of those possible channels in a moment. But Vinay, do you want to just give us an update on kind of where you're at with your round at the moment?
Yeah, definitely. So we only actually opened our round last month. We're looking for pre-seed funding at the minute. So again, targeting angels, early stage sort of VC funds. And yeah, we're currently still going through the process. I've probably reached out to about 70 people so far. Although I must say I've done a lot of research before even kind of opening a round. And that was just from some advice that, we got through some of the friends that we know who are also founders. And they said, look, you're best off doing as much research as you can first, try and find, build a list, build a database. And then basically when you're ready, then actually open your round and start kind of getting the word out there. But before that, we actually attended loads of events in London, loads of pitch events. Mainly we just sort of, spectated at those events just to see how people pitched, how people, you have to have a high level of confidence to be able to stand up and ask for money. And it can be quite embarrassing sometimes. So, we found going to those events helped. And then also doing a few kind of pitch sessions online, just with, different mentors, and getting loads of real world feedback is like gold dust to, I think, a startup founder. So we kind of done all that research before opening a round. And now we're kind of at the stage where we're confident to, go on stage and pitch to an audience. So yeah, we've only reached out to about 70 people so far.
Yeah, and of that, so yeah, great point there about the research, and I love the idea that you've gone out there and sort of learned from other founders, watched their pitches, understood how to get better. Of that 70, kind of, how did you find all those names? Is that Google searches, finding lists? Like, just go into that in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, definitely. I first started because the product we're building, I worked in the industry for about 9 years, which kind of helped. So I had kind of a few people in mind already. So I started with the people that I already knew. Because someone said, your friends and I guess your friends and family is kind of the first round, they say, but the people that you know is probably the best place to start. Having a warm networking, getting warm intros from your network is the best place. So I started just by making a list of people that I've worked with that, are probably, I consider earning quite a lot working for a company. I basically put those people down on the list and then went on LinkedIn and searched through their network to see if I had any mutual people that, everyone starts by just adding loads of angel investors on LinkedIn or VC funds and following pages. So then I started looking to see if there's any connections there. And then I would basically create I started by creating a Notion database and then having the name of the investor and then who potentially I can get a warm intro from. And that's how I started basically emailing and trying to get as many warm intros as possible. Yeah, that's pretty much how I started. Then obviously LinkedIn has loads of free databases of angel investors and emails and stuff. That's obviously one of them. You can kind of take those, but I guess using those, you'll end up, like Lauren said, like the cold outreach is, you're probably not going to get much from it. Or you may, if you come from like a reputable background or something, and you start with that line. But for me, I didn't. So I guess I use those databases, but try and hone in on anyone I know that's very targeted in my industry, which is marketing tech. So I go down that basis first and then try and basically email them first using cold outreach. Those are the two ways. This is one really big tip that I actually got just last week from an early stage VC fund who said no to us. But what she did say was the best place to find proven angels is on Companies House. So you go on Companies House, you find, companies of similar, industry or model that you're creating and look at their cap tables and basically find angels that way because, they're already vetted. You don't really need to do much due diligence and, they've already invested. So I've only just started doing that last week, and now I'm collating another database just of those angels.
That's a brilliant tip, and I guess you can also just check the valuation as well, right? So you can have a quick look at, while you're there, at what kind of level was the company at, and what was the share price, and therefore the valuation.
Exactly.
To secure the number of investors your startup needs, you'll need to do a lot of outreach, and this can get pretty confusing to manage the status of every conversation. But thanks to Notion, tracking has never been easier with their simple and effective template where you can add potential investors and continuously track the progress of your communications with ease. With two viewing options, the table view allows you to see the full details of your relationship with each investor with customizable properties to help you track what's most important to you, whilst the status view helps you to quickly analyse what stage each investor is at from the first point of contact all the way up to winning or losing the investment deal.
Yeah.
And Lauren, when you're asking for intros, how did you go about that process?
Yeah, so I initially just met with founders in my network who had raised, particularly within F&B recently, ideally, and just asked if there was anyone that they thought would be interested in what Oatsu was doing specifically, rather than just asking for an intro to anyone, just seeing if there was someone in particular that they could recommend, or I would research beforehand, like who had invested in their round, and if there was someone in particular that I wanted an intro to, then I would ask a more specific question. And I also, there were some kind of individuals who've been like mentors, and I asked them kind of similarly if there was anyone that they knew. A couple of people who are, I guess, like super connectors. They've just got a really, really good network, and they seem to know everyone. And they had some great ideas of people, and sometimes it was like they introduced me to someone who wanted to introduce me to someone else, and just took all of those opportunities forward. And I think another great place, I think doing that kind of one-to-one connection building is great, but it can take quite a long time. And so I think if there are any, like you said, Vinay, competitions or places where you can pitch yourself to investors, and you have a wide audience all listening to you at that time, whether that's through an accelerator demo day, if you can take part in an accelerator that starts a few months before your funding round closes, and there's going to be a big demo day with loads of investors there. We did that for Unrest and also for LSE and made some great connections there. Then they're also kind of one-off startup competitions like the pitch. I know you run at different times of the year, which we took part in a couple of years ago, and such a great audience there. There are basically lots of events and opportunities for you to put yourself out there, which I think can be quite efficient because everyone's listening to you.
Yeah, and for those people that are kind of haven't done sort of pitching in public before, are there any tips you've got on sort of maximizing the time you're investing in that? So, are you doing any prep on kind of who the judges are, or like what kind of follow-up do you do after the event, that kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. I think any event that you go to, it's always valuable to see who's going to be attending and see if there's anyone that you particularly want to connect with. So you kind of go in there knowing who you want to meet. Researching if there are going to be judges, for example, at the pitch, I know there are judges on a panel. I'd look at their background and what the investment thesis is of the individual or the company, if you can find it online before, so you can have a more targeted discussion.
Yeah. And what about the accelerator piece? Vinay, I don't know if you've kind of been involved in any support programs so far. I know you're a bit earlier in your journey.
I've actually applied to the NetWest one, which is quite funny. Same as Lauren did, but we've applied to quite a few accelerators because we've heard, like, again through the grapevine, that people that go through these accelerator programs have a bit more, I guess, you become a bit more credible to investors, and you also make a bit of noise. And without the noise in the industry, people don't tend to look at you. So I guess that's kind of one of the routes we're actually looking at as well. There's a couple that start at the end of the door. From September, so we're trying to get onto a couple of those programs.
Yeah, I guess it gives you that sort of social proof and validation of, you were accepted on, and therefore you must be kind of legit and doing well.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah, I'd say excellent. Another investment-focused one is Hotbed. So they have programs for female founders and also male and female founders, different programs. And it's mainly virtual based, but you can do some great practice pitch sessions, and investors often attend and give you feedback on the session. So yeah, I'd shout out Hotbed.
Yeah, and we've worked with them too. I really appreciate what they're trying to do, and their network's really strong as well. So yeah, great recommendation there. In terms of the actual emails that you're sending out, so maybe we could do the cold outreach first. Like, what does that email look like? That's obviously the hardest thing, to go from somebody that's barely heard of you or might have seen you on LinkedIn to trying to get a meeting. These are very busy people. They get lots of decks every week. So are there any tips on the actual email itself?
Yeah, I think definitely having a template does help. But I guess I have used a template before and got no response. And then I tried a few different templates, again, got no response. And then I guess the main thing here is when you're researching, especially angel investors, is finding something in common with them. So it has to sound personal. So basically I'd go on LinkedIn, look at their profile. So most of them have their own websites, their own bios. So you go look at that and just see what interests them. And basically you want to kind of almost build a thesis in your own head of why you'd want this investor on your team. Like, we're very hard into kind of looking at who we want on the team and who can actually help us. So we again, just find something of interest and use that kind of as a plug in the beginning. So, you enter your hi and whatnot in your template, and then kind of, say why you're reaching out to them in the beginning. Some of them are like, we like founder focused type angel investors. So we look for them. And that's usually one of the things we say is we like your ethos around investing in startups. Hence why we're reaching out directly. And then I go straight into like the traction that we've built. We've got over 800 users in 6 months. Stats like that usually grab their attention. And then it just goes into, hey, attach my pitch deck type thing. And either way, would really love at least a response. And as soon as I started putting that in there, I started getting responses. Quite a lot of no's, which I think every founder, Lauren, you're probably back as well, you get loads of no's. But I guess I always follow up afterwards because I like to keep the conversation going over email. So I'd always ask, feedback for us as gold dust right now, because it truly is, as a founder that's trying to build a product. And especially when you only just started, taking revenue, it's like, how do you get to the next stage? So I always ask, do you have any tips or any tricks or anything that I could do to reach out to other angels, or do you know anyone that might be interested? At the moment, I've had a fairly high success rate with responses. And that's how I found out about, going to company's house and researching that way. Especially angels are fairly happy to give that type of advice if you, I guess, contact them in the right way and not use, a mass cold outreach automation bot, basically.
And there's plenty of those around at the moment. But yeah, I like the idea of, you're iterative, you're learning from every bit of outreach you're doing. And obviously those conversations, I mean, they might come to fruition, but it might be a year's time, right? So it might be your next round, or, a bit of mentoring and an introduction further down the line. So having those conversations in play is really, really helpful. Lauren, I know you focused on the warm introduction side, but yeah, any tips around kind of the email outreach that you did that you shared that you found really worked?
Yeah, I think it's really important to focus on your traction, as Vinay said, and to summarize that into a few quick bullet points, and definitely open with like how you met them, or saying that it was nice to meet them at this event, or it was great to be introduced via this person, just making it really clear so they know kind of how you where you're from and how they know you. And I would definitely, if they say that they don't want to, if it's not the right time for them to invest, or they give a reason, I would ask if they'd be interested in being kept up to date with your progress, and then including them in your investor update that you can send to people who haven't taken part in this round, and keep them updated for your next round. And I think they'll definitely be keen to hear. And then my last point would be just to keep the email as concise as possible. I also asked if they would be open to having a short call to discuss. Some preferred to do that, and then some just wanted to ask questions kind of over email. So be flexible.
Yeah. And is there any way you can, well, first of all, I suppose on that regular update, is that something you're doing quarterly or monthly, or is that just kind of when you're ready to go for another round?
Yeah, so we've done it approximately every 2 months, but I haven't been strict with exactly how regularly, because I want to send an update when we've got exciting news to share. and that's happened to be every 2.5 months or so. So yeah, that's how we keep people updated, and we send the same update to investors as well as to non-investors that want to be kept updated. And it's just mainly the achievements and some of the challenges that we faced, how we're overcoming them, some of the exciting conversations that we're having with retailers, and any news around like hiring or PR or events that we've spoken at or shared our products at.
Yeah, so there's kind of looking for those things that kind of keep them interested, maintain those relationships. Do you ever include like an ask in there, like, well, we're looking for an introduction to a certain company?
Yeah, that's a good point. We do say if there's these are the ways that you can help us. So if we are looking to hire, if they know anyone in their network, or if we're looking for an introduction to a specific customer, or if there's some news, there's some news that we want them to share with their network, or if there's any way they can help us, we include a few asks in there, definitely. And a lot of our investors say that they really appreciate receiving these updates, and that some of the other investors, some of the other investments that they've made haven't necessarily kept them as updated. So I think it's definitely a positive thing to do, and people, they've invested in you because they really love what you're doing and they want to support and in any way they can.
That's it. And I guess you don't feel very special if you don't hear from someone until they're next asking for money, right? So you kind of want to bridge that gap too.
I think so.
And a lot of the thing in funding rounds is kind of getting momentum. So, you've got some interest and you're able to sort of parlay that and encourage people to get over the line. Is there any advice you've got, and I guess this is mainly going to be for you, Lauren, around kind of getting that momentum and making sure that when you do have small wins, like somebody agreeing to put in a certain amount, that you're able to kind of leverage that in the best possible way?
Yeah, so during the campaign, I think it's really important if you are doing a crowdfunding campaign or even just a normal investment round. I think what worked really well for us is when we shot our crowdfunding video, which went on the page, we also shot a lot of short clips in the same studio, kind of produced to a really high standard that celebrated each achievement. So those included like having 100 investors in our crowdfund or achieving 100% of our investment target. And we went all the way up to 250, which is where fortunately we ended up finishing. So that every milestone that we hit, we could celebrate that and share that as a new update on LinkedIn. And then each one of those just built momentum. And a lot of founders in my network liked the posts, and then investors in their network reached out. And I think it really helped that the crowdfund was a time-bound opportunity, so they could see that there was only however many days remaining, and that definitely helped with the momentum, I think. And you can make your own timeline with your own round, but I think having that page on a reputable platform just really helps communicate that timeline effectively. So even if you're not filming a crowdfunding video, it might help you to talk through your kind of pitch deck and proposal and create kind of a well-shot video in a studio with the help of a videographer, so that you can share that with investors, and it kind of saves you time, but also saves them time, and they can get a feel for you before agreeing to a call. And then similarly, while you're filming that, you can film those short clips and just share them on LinkedIn, and just, that will help to build the momentum of the campaign.
And just for clarity, so you had all of those videos in the can right from the start, so just in case you needed them?
Yeah. I think we did a second round of filming like midway through the campaign to top up, because I think we needed some more. And we did some kind of last minute, kind of 24 hours to go, like 3 days to go, just more time bound ones right at the end, just to kind of get the last few people over the line. And we also did a webinar with investors midway through the campaign that was like a live Q&A that they could attend, again, to just build that relationship and for them to get to know us. And then we shared that with everyone who was interested in the crowdfund but hadn't yet invested. So you can they can express interest basically in receiving your pitch deck through the platform. Or if there are any investors that haven't kind of got over the line, if you've got some in-depth content that you can share with them that they can watch at their own time, then I think that's helpful.
Right. It's really interesting to hear the amount of kind of preparation that, it's a 6-week campaign, but it is kind of content hungry. I guess you have to have regular updates. You have to keep the momentum. You have to sort of entertain and make sure that all that hard work you've done in the background to get those people interested, you can kind of capitalize that and actually push them through and convert them.
Yeah, 100%. It is a lot of preparation. I would say set aside a few months before the campaign to get prepared and make sure that you have as much content ready, and also email. We use Klaviyo as a platform, but email templates so you can prepare plans for your whole campaign in Notion, which I found really helpful. And just make a plan for what you're doing on email, what you're doing on LinkedIn, Instagram, and I would not rush to launch the campaign. I would, if you need to push it back by a week or two, just having the content in the bank already and a plan is really important.
Yeah. And on the Notion side, just give us a bit more detail there. Obviously appreciate that they're backing the pitch this year. So it's lovely to hear that you're using them. So are you just tracking kind of investors and using it as a CRM, or have you got your marketing plan and stuff in there too?
Yeah, so we had an investor tracker. So similar to what Vinay shared, like a table with all the details of the investors, how we met them, other people that they'd invested in, kind of updates on the communications that we track through Notion, and also a campaign plan. So similarly, more like a kind of a project timeline and the deliverables on the content across those different channels. So like emails and socials, on a calendar, when we were going to send them and what the plan was, who was responsible for kind of doing each part, and tagging different people in the team.
The fundraising database is designed to keep track of every interaction you have with investors and see when you last made contact. Each row opens up into its own page where you can add any notes from your meetings, make checklists of follow-up items, embed videos or podcasts, and so much more. You also get 3 viewing options: a table view to easily see the full details, a board by status view to simply track the stage at which each investor is at, and a calendar view to monitor any upcoming meetings or events.
Awesome. Vinay, on the kind of prep side, like how are you doing in terms of kind of getting assets together? Like presumably you've got a pitch deck. Is there anything else that you've worked up that's kind of ready to go for this campaign?
Yeah, definitely. So, as like Lauren said, videos and content, especially because I'm building a content marketplace, is what we're trying to focus on the most. So, I use Loom, for example, to like record a video of me talking about the product, how it works, and those types of things. And most of the time, especially if you're like, for example, reaching out to like US investors, they'll always ask for, a video link of the CEO or one of the co-founders speaking about the product. So that's and that's actually came off someone asking us for one. So then we built one of those. Again, pitch deck of standard thing that every startup needs. I actually use Notion to build ambassador pages. So a lot of the creators that come on the platform, we basically reach out to them to become ambassadors of the brand. And I use Notion to basically track that as well. And just basically feed them information, because it's easy enough to create something that looks very nice. Let's put it that way. Again, also hosting the deck on there is pretty good. And also just creating a data room. Although I'm kind of getting to the stage now where angels are asking for a data room. And it's mainly just, stuff to do with traction and, show us how many users you have, how much it's growing per day or per week or per month, how much revenue you're making. So we, collect all of our Stripe transactions and put that in there so people can validate, angels can validate that we're not lying, essentially. So having a data room there is also very good. Just be mindful of, I guess, sharing it publicly. And just giving access to the angels that actually want to see it, because it obviously couldn't use Notion to base a lot of information about the company. So yeah, those are probably the main assets. I think the video stuff for us is probably the most important, because again, it builds loads of traction really quickly, and especially again publishing it on LinkedIn and that type of stuff.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. So you've got your spreadsheets in there in terms of sort of forecast, cash flows, bells and so on, pitch deck. But you mentioned there as well, it's interesting that you also put in some evidence just to kind of back up what you're doing so they can do their due diligence and everything.
Yeah, I think definitely when you speak to like some angels, some of them really like want to move really fast. I guess the whole FOMO element. Some of them are like, they seem not bothered. and then you kind of have to, chase a few times for them to respond and stuff, which is kind of normal. So I guess having all of those things ready, and that's kind of the prep we were doing beforehand. And now all I really need to do is go in, once a week and just update the numbers. So it's easy enough for someone to, go on. And again, Lauren said, we just send out emails to say, hey, we've just updated our monthly figures. We've only just sent one of those out this month because we've only been open for a month. But that usually helps. And we've seen a couple of people reply back to that and say, hey, yeah, we'll take a look at it. So it does work currently for us at the moment on a very sort of micro level, very small. But as we start going through the fundraising process, I'm hoping that picks up a bit more traction.
Perfect. Thank you. And Lauren, is there anything you'd add on the data room? Is there anything that kind of helped you that wasn't mentioned there?
Yeah. I think the thing that investors wanted to see most from us, and this is only a select few investors, not all of them, but definitely our larger investors wanted to be taken through the financial model. And I think because we had secured, I think, 1 or 2 listings with retailers at that point, and there were kind of conversations happening with others. So we included like a summary of where we were at with some of those other conversations. That was quite important for them to know how far along those were, and also what the estimated volumes of those retailers were, how likely they were to get over the line, and also the financial projections and kind of which ones were confirmed, like what was projected, like a best case scenario, but also if certain listings didn't go ahead, kind of more worst case scenarios. So I think, yeah, within the data room, like the financial model was quite important, and we did get support from a fractional CFO for a bit of time just before and around while the campaign and the fundraise was happening to support me on building out those scenarios. I think those were the main things that they wanted to check over.
Yeah, it's really interesting the level of detail. I guess it varies by business what they want to dig deeper on, right? So obviously for the retail side, knowing that your sales pipeline is really robust and that your scenarios and forecasts are on point, because picking up one extra large retailer presumably makes a massive difference to your projections. So you appreciate perhaps it varies a bit by sector in terms of how much detail they want to go into on different things.
Yeah, I think definitely for like SaaS tooling, a technology-based company, it's more user growth and, well, I guess user acquisitions first. Like how do you get the users on the platform? Like what's your growth strategy? What's your go-to-market in that sense? For us, for example, it's very easy if you're in sort of a network effect type model where, social media and, content creation and, the creators on our platform essentially promote themselves, which off the back of that promotes CreatorStock as a brand and as a platform. That is actually, it's a quite unique place to be, I'd say. And if you can kind of find that piece of information and really show that in the deck, that's helped us quite a lot. Because the minute you say, we're growing with the network effect and, we're bootstrapping, so we don't have any money for marketing at the moment, but we've gone to like 800 users in 6 months, it's like, oh, well, how did you do it? And we're like, well, creators have been promoting themselves, and in turn, people have joined our platform. So definitely investors look for like that one thing that's going to make this thing go crazy, essentially. That's the one element. And then I guess the revenue side or the monetization side is the other bit. And one of the things we've been getting back quite often is defensibility, and how are you defensible in the market? And again, for us, it's the monetization piece. We have flexible monetization for different types of users, which other platforms don't. So it's, I guess, if you have, one element to your pitch where you say, well, this is how we go to market and this is how we're going to get to our first 1,000 users very quickly, and you can show it in a bit of traction, that's always good. And then the second piece is how are you defensible? And because it's very easy for someone to spin up a tech platform in this day and age, especially with loads of no-code tools available and that type of stuff. So those two for me were probably the most asked questions so far anyway.
Love it. Well, look, really appreciate both of you joining the call and the time there. There's loads of useful and practical tips. I just wanted to throw one more at you and say, if there is one thing when you look back on the fundraising process that's really made the biggest impact, or one sort of thing that felt like a penny drop moment for you in terms of outreach to investors, if you could both give me one, it can be something you mentioned already. And I don't know, Lauren, you okay to go first on that one?
Yeah. I would say that a couple of things. So if you're doing a crowdfunding campaign or a time-bound fundraise, then prepare for having a lot of interest in the first week and then a lot of interest in the last week. I think we raised 60 or 70% of our total funding in the last week. And in that middle period is where you do need to have that content prepared that you can keep that momentum up and the excitement up. And a related point is to start building your network as soon as possible, particularly on LinkedIn, is critical. And going to events, kind of becoming known in your space for what you do, is just super helpful. So you've already got kind of people who are really interested in what you're doing already when you go out with that news that you're going to be raising. And yeah, just share the news with as many people as you can, starting with the people that you know best and who've really been interested and supportive of your journey. And yeah, I think just start from there and share a lot.
And Vinay, do you have one for us?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, I was always scared to ask. And it might be a very basic one, but just having the ability to just ask with like no sort of, not being scared to, if someone says no, basically, because if you don't ask, you don't get, right? So definitely just being able to ask and talk to as many people as possible and ask them if they know anyone. Do you guys know any high net worth individuals who might be interested in investing? Or because I've got a couple of warm mentors that way. Obviously, just looking through your network, because although you may think you don't know anyone, someone may know someone else. And I found that has helped me quite a lot. And just to second what Lauren said, the events have been amazing because I've met so many founders who have told me, hey, you should apply for this, early stage VC fund, or, I got investment from these guys and that type of stuff. So that's always helpful. And one of the other things that I found really helpful was I reached out to a few companies or a few startups that have built products for the same audience as me, but not in competition, basically. So in the gig economy, creator economy, I found a few startups that are building other tools that I know have got funding. And, I just look at that on Crunchbase or whatever it is. And basically I just, befriend them on LinkedIn and just ask them questions because they always also know people that are interested in the same industry. So those are probably what has worked for me pretty well.
Love it. Thanks again for taking the time to talk to us today. Really appreciate the practical advice you've shared. And again, thanks to our partner for this one, Notion. We'll include a few links below. They have some templates designed to manage this process from end to end. So if you are getting into a funding round, do check them out. We've also got an offer for a 6-month trial, so you can get that and use the tools at no cost. For all of you that are interested in raising funding, please do go check out the pitch as well. It's a great way to meet some exciting founders like yourselves and also to get in front of investors and get those meetings that you want. Thanks, everyone.